Следующее слово я предоставляю Дэвиду Блоссу, который расскажет о исследовательской журналистике и как, может быть, исследовательская журналистика, как, может быть, нас интересует, влияет на общественное сознание и то, как общество затем реагирует и, соответственно, требует от правительств, от самоуправлений решения тех или иных задач. Пожалуйста.
Thank you. Very briefly, I've lived in Tbilisi the last 15 years and worked with journalists in all three Caucasus countries. Our organization sees our role as first finding mostly money laundering, and then much harder trying to explain it to readers and viewers. Even in my country, I'm from America, I haven't lived there for 20 years, it's very hard to define corruption. What one country or one group thinks is corruption and another one thinks is international business. And I think it's always important to understand that, each country is going to decide, what is corruption, what is money laundering, and what is acceptable business. There is no world standard, and there probably shouldn't be. And we find this all the time because most of our stories cross borders. And I can't tell you how many times, working more in Georgia, where the criticism we get is, why are you bothering these people? They brought money into the country. No money is coming in. This is just business. I think the reason we try to do these stories is so our government, so our society can make that decision. It's not our job to say, oh, this is good or this is bad. It's certainly not our job to prosecute cases. That's what your legal system is for. Our job is to show money moving from place to place, who did it, how they did it. It's not to do this. That's to each country, to each legal system, to say, no, that's okay, that's fine, that's business, or no, that's not fine. When we try to define what stories to do, one of the things we look at is, can we show that it took millions of, I'll say, dollars out of the budget? Is this money that should belong to the government either in taxes, fees, and isn't in the budget because of this activity? Is it costing taxpayers money? Are schools not being built or hospitals not being built because budgets are too small, because this money isn't being collected? We fight a lot for freedom of information in all countries. And I was talking about this in my class this week. I'm lucky enough, I teach a class in Tbilisi that has Georgians, Armenian, and Azeri students. And what we talked about with freedom of information was government should have the right and has to have the right, we want them to have the right to protect military secrets and most Minister of Interior secrets, most police secrets, and we understand that. Because that affects people's lives. People can get killed. So we try very hard not to ask for that, not to violate it. Economic crime is something different. And that's sort of the dividing line for us. We believe in a lot of open information when it comes to business. The argument in Georgia as a classic country is everything is a business secret because businessmen need, privacy, there's competition. Honestly, in Georgia, in most of our industries, there's only one company, so there is no competition. But what we believe in all the countries, Latvia is actually a pretty good example, we have good partners there, is if the business registry is open, if the property registry is open, then we look, and if we see somebody with a salary this big, has property this big, cars this big, land this big, then we think it's fair to ask questions. When we talk about business privacy, again, trying to be consistent, one of the things we say is, okay, if it is a private business and it's just the businessman's money, to a certain extent we understand, you know, that's his to use as he pleases. If his partner is the government and your tax money is one of the partners in this, you know, in this particular deal, that's different because they're spending your money. If there's grants, even if it's from international organizations using other countries' tax money, we feel like there's a right there that they should have some idea who their partners are and what the deal is. Third one that we argue is, okay, it may be a private business deal. This is you know, interesting in Armenia. How much is the government spending on infrastructure of tax money to build the road, the bridge, or whatever is needed for the private business? If that money is coming out of the state treasury. But those are the kind of cases we argue for. Now, I'm not going to tell you that we win very often in Georgia. It's not a great legal system. But we go to court, not fighting, but arguing the issues. And we go the whole way up through the Supreme Court, arguing always that not for our organization or our story, but for the idea that public should, if it's their money being spent in any part of the deal, they should have a right to know who is the beneficial owner, you know, who is their partner, you know, who is the business. We try to be consistent about that. It's hard in these countries. First money laundering story that I did in Georgia after Panama Papers came out was a guy in Georgian in Britain who manipulated Argentine currency, peso, and very quickly took out $55 million out of the system and got out of England as fast as he could, all in one day. It's a cousin of my teaching partner. You know, and that happens all the time. It's not just political parties. These are small countries. There's X number of people with access to capital, X number of families. So almost every story we've ever done like this, it ends up being somebody we know. And I'm a foreigner, but my staff, this is the business community, and it's not huge. And we get back to my first point is, as a government, as a society, as a voting society, each country has to decide what is corruption and what is legitimate business. The only thing I would add very quickly, it's because I am a teacher, is this stuff is hard enough for businessmen, for economists, for ministers to understand. From a journalism standpoint, we have a long ways to go, but we need to start teaching journalists this. You know, how money works, how banks work, the banks that are on the London Stock Exchange, the ones that are outside our countries that are publicly owned companies, how they work. Not so they'll do yellow stories, but so they'll understand them, so they can read the notes and understand the system. They can't do a fair job. They can't do any kind of job at all if they don't understand how it works. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, господин Дэвид.